So hello everyone. Right now we're gonna do a very bare bones like basics of 3D game development using Unity. Unfortunately, we didn't have like that much time to prepare because we've been like doing workshops back to back. But we're gonna we'll show like as much as we can. So I think I'm gonna show like basic movement and how to like animate a model in a 3D game. And I'm gonna also do sounds. So there's a good transition between the sounds I'll show on Unity and then the next workshop, which will be right afterwards, which will also be on sounds, but more. What is it like? What's the next workshop again?
Sound effects and music composition.
Yeah, music composition.
Yes.
So it'll be like a nice little transition.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the plan. I'm just gonna increase your volume a little bit. Okay, so yesterday we showed, we kind of already showed like how Unity looked like, the editing tools and everything. So I'm gonna make a new project and I'll just call it Shark because I'm gonna be using my Shark model that I've created on the Blender tutorials, and I'm just gonna save it in CGD. Okay, and yeah, now it's just gonna open slowly. Yeah, the twerking shark. I hope it won't take too long. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna show how camera works, how the cameras work, because it's a little bit complicated sometimes, and especially if you want to do like a first-person shooter. But you could definitely find tutorials like all over the place on how to do a first-person shooter, and it's fairly easy to find. It's just I didn't today I didn't have the time to kind of do my own research, but yeah. So that's why I'm gonna skip camera work. Okay, so we enter the scene, just as we did before, but this time it's a 3D scene. And what we want to do first is create a folder for our model. And we also want to create a plane. So here on the plus sign you could find things you could add, and I'm just gonna add a plane and I'll make it super big. Oh, like that. Okay. So if we look at the game, actually I think the plane is not at 0, 0. Make sure that the plane is on the 0 position for the y-axis. And there we go. Now we have a plane. And I'm gonna import the model that I had. And there it is. I show how to export 3D models in the Blender tutorial, so if you have missed that, you definitely go check. And it's in the third one where I do animation and rigging. I show like how to export it and import it into Unity. And at this point, we have our model, but if I just simply put it here, it's completely bare. It has like no colors or anything. So what we want to do is select the model and go on materials. Hold up a minute. Hold up. Which version of Unity did I choose?
Or in 2019 3.0. F6. That's what it says up there.
Oh, okay, so this is why it's not working. This version of Unity, for some reason, when I import models, the animation and materials are completely non-existent. So make sure you're like on the latest version and not 3.0 F6.
You probably need to re-import
Yeah,
after you just close that first. And,
yeah, I'm gonna have to reopen. Okay.
fine. I did the same thing yesterday.
Yeah, it's really weird. I don't know why that version.
Yeah, I don't understand why it gets the default like that. It's just weird.
Yeah. Sometimes I guess they do updates and then they break break Unity somehow. They don't make sure. Had the problem
It's pretty
where
common.
yeah, I've had a problem where I've like updated a version of Unity and I had a terrain, and then I updated it and then the terrain didn't work anymore. It was just like
Yeah, I don't know.
It was not. Sometimes
It's
you gotta be
pretty-
careful. Just
Yeah.
pick a Unity version that works. Okay, so I'm just gonna put this plane back. And okay, so now if I click the model, as you can see, now we could see the animations and materials, which is what we were missing before. And for materials, you want to do extract materials. Basically, this just means this model was made in Blender and there were materials attached to it. And this is just extracting them from the model, what was like already embedded in the model. And I'm gonna make a new folder and I'll call it materials or something. You can name it whatever you want. And now the material should be in here. So I had a texture map. This one, Shark Diffuse. I'm just gonna import it to Unity. And now if I just simply, oh wait, let me first put the model on the scene so you could see the magic. So this is the material that was attached to the shark in Blender, and if I put the texture map into albedo, which is like the diffuse color, the base color, it will magically color the shark as it's supposed to. Okay. There you go. So that's what we want, and if we go back to models, we also want to set up our animations. So I have two animations. I have twerk, which if you see here, this is the animation. And I have walk. Whoop. There you go. It's very, very sneaky looking walk because I didn't put that much effort into the body movement, but it'll do the job. So for these, we want them to be looped. So if you don't click loop time and loop pose, it will only do the animation once and completely stop after that. So you want to select these. Unless you have an animation that you just want it to do once, don't select these, but for our purposes, we want them. So be sure to apply, because if you don't apply, nothing will happen. And this shark seems to be, yeah, so you just position it at 0.
Rose, I'm just not sure if you are aware, but I think you are streaming this and not only recording on Twitch. On Twitch, so just check. Yes, you are.
Well, that's okay. I don't mind.
Okay. Just let you know. I mean, it's fine. But I was like,
It's not a big
I
deal.
got a notification on my phone. I'm like, okay.
It's if people want to watch me on Twitch, I have no problem with that. Okay, so it looks like our model's kind of fused into the plane, so I'm just gonna like put him higher up a little bit, and I guess the next step is similar to what we did in the 2D tutorial. We want to add a collider to our model, because if we don't have a collider, the model will just fuse into anything it bumps into. So instead of collider 2D, it'll be just box collider. Actually, I mean, there's a bunch of different types. Capsule collider is pretty good too, but I think box collider will do the job. And just make it match the shape of our character as closely as possible. And actually, a good way to have both sides equal is to select one side and press Alt while you're increasing the size. It'll like expand equally. So just to keep everything like symmetric. And we want the bottom to match the bottom of our feet. And I think that's good enough. So now we want to add a rigid body. This is also something we did in the 2D tutorial. And on rigid body, I think, yeah, we don't need to mess with the settings right now. Okay, so if we press play, our model should, as you can see, should collide with the plane that was below it, which, by the way, already has a collider. And yeah, if I just press play, it'll just fall and stay put. And we can't move it right now. So for that reason, we are going to add a player controller. Actually, let's make a new folder for scripts. And here, create a C# script, and we'll call it player controller. Like that. Okay. And now, we just drag and drop here, and we could open it in our Visual Studio. Okay, so I guess we could start with like the movement. So what we need first is our rigid body. We need to have access to it. And so we look for rigid body, call it RB. And then we do RB equals get component rigid body. If you remember from last tutorial, the one yesterday, we need to do get component here to have access to this element in our editor. So we're just doing the exact same thing as the 2D tutorial. And okay. And we also want like we want move speed, private float speed, and we also want a turn speed, because this is not necessary, but since we're like in a 3D game and we want our character to move in 8 directions, so like up, down, left, right, and then diagonally. It looks better if it turns smoothly from one direction to the other, instead of like completely doing a 180 direction turn from, like, let's say you're going upwards and then you press the down button, it will just like automatically go from like top to bottom. And it kind of looks weird for a 3D game, so it's good to have like some kind of nice transition. if that makes any sense. And these two things, like we did before, we want to have like easy access to them in the editor, because while we're testing, maybe we want to kind of mess with the numbers to make the game look better. So for that reason, we're gonna do serialize field, and then I copy that. Whoop. Okay. And then in our editor, we should have access to these two variables. There you go. Right now, I don't really know what speed to give it. And speed isn't actually doing anything, so I'm going to continue writing some code. And, all right. So now I guess we could start doing handling our inputs, so like our WASD inputs. So for that reason, I'm gonna do void handle input function. This will just be like all of the buttons that we'll be using in our game, which is basically just our arrows. And in here we want our horizontal input, which is our parameter. If we go back into editor, if we remember correctly, there's where do you see the project settings? So project settings, we have where's our where are our inputs? Are they there?
That's so weird. They're not there.
They're not there
Input
for some
manager?
reason.
Is it input manager?
I don't know.
What?
Input
That is
manager.
so weird.
It's the first time that happened to me.
Two. Rose, what about the input manager under graphics?
Under graphics.
So like input like input manager, the one below it. Same
Oh,
thing,
yeah, it was just hidden.
Here.
Okay, thank you very much.
There we go.
Yeah, so we have our horizontal and our vertical.
We found it.
Which is like a WASD, my bad. And so here we have horizontal, and here we're gonna have, I'm just gonna copy this, and vertical. So it's a float because when we press, for example, W, the number that we're gonna have is, it's gonna be a number between -1 and 1. So if for example we press W, the vertical will be equal to 1. And if we press S, it will be -1. But if, for example, we're pressing W and D at the same time, it's gonna do like the in-between number between, I think vertical will be like 0.5, and then like if we're pressing D, for example, our horizontal will be 0.5. So in that case, we'll be going like diagonally, like northeast, in northeast direction. If, for example, I would have written get access raw, it would be either -1, 0, or 1. But since I'm doing get access, it's like the numbers between -1 and 1. So it could be in between. So, And now we want an input vector. So I'm gonna create a new variable on top, which is gonna be called vector3, which is vector3 is like x, y, and z. And I'll call it input vector. And this is just a vector that will tell us the direction in which our character is going on in the scene, basically. So it might be a good idea to initialize our vector to 0 just for safety. So I'll just add that right now. Input vector equals vector 3.0. And here, our input vector equals new vector 3. And here it will be the resulting number we get from horizontal for the x coordinate. We don't need anything for the y coordinate because if you can see in Unity, just waiting it for it to load. If, for example, I select our model, the y-axis is going upwards. And since I'm not going to cover like jumping or anything or like going upwards in the y direction, I don't really care about it. So for that reason, I'm going to just keep our input vector y coordinate as 0 because we don't care about it. And our z coordinate will be vertical. So basically this is just like showing, if I looked at our character from the top view down, I guess, well, since our character is actually facing this direction, it might be better to have our vertical as our x coordinate and our horizontal as the y coordinate. Just so it matches like what it shows on the editor. So yeah. So x is going upwards like in the vertical direction and our z is like the horizontal. So just make sure to like match the direction your model is facing. And yeah. So I think we're good for that. And then we could so that's that we're done with inputs. So of course you have to always update, you always have to check which inputs you're doing throughout the game. So you have to add it to update. But now like our character won't be able to move because we're actually not telling the game, oh, move the rigid body. So we have to do that next. So we're gonna have a new function and we're gonna call it move. Whoa. It like auto-completed for me right there. So our function move. And in move, I'm gonna add a new variable, which is also going to be a vector3. And I'm gonna call this movement vector. So input vector is telling our game in which direction we want to move, and movement vector is going to like apply the movement. Actually, it's better if I show you what movement vector is for. So movement vector is actually going to be the linear interpolation between itself and our input vector. And here it's usually a float number. I chose 1 to 5, but I think you could choose something else that works better. So what does it mean, the linear interpolation of between our movement vector and our input vector? Basically, it's just a way for our game, if I understand correctly, is basically just telling our game to smoothly transition from our previous position vector to our new position vector. So that's what the linear interpolation is for. It's just so that like throughout the game it'll like slowly, instead of linear interpolation doesn't automatically change our position from one to the other. It will like gradually increase the numbers associated to the vectors to match this one. If someone has a better explanation, it would be helpful.
Yeah, it basically chops the entire movement in pieces.
Yeah, basically that's a
Given
good
an
way
interval.
to say. It's just
Yeah.
it's like gradually increasing the number from this vector to the next one. So it's just like more smooth, and it won't be completely instant from one position to the other. So that's what it does.
Oh yeah, thanks for the link.
Yeah, good. Thank you for the link. You could look at the Discord for the link. A short explanation of linear interpolation. And okay. So once we have this, we want to actually move our rigid body. So RB for rigid body. And we're going to add to it a velocity. And velocity will simply be our movement vector times the speed that we defined up here. And like time dot delta time. So this is just telling is a velocity is like a vector 3, and we're just telling our rigid body to gradually move according to the movement vector we defined previously, and then like updating it every frame. And the speed is just to like make it faster, because if we don't add multiply the speed, it will just be like numbers between I think -1 and 1, like I said before, because of the horizontal and vertical variables up here. So you have to multiply by the speed. So then here we want to add it to our update. And there we go. And if everything worked correctly, our character should be able to move. Okay, it's not moving because I forgot to give it a speed. So while I tested this, usually it took like a huge speed, so I might give it like 1,000 or something. It might be a little bit too much, but we'll see. Okay, yeah. So now our character moves, but it's tumbling around. We don't want that. So how do we fix that? In our rigid body, there's like a little arrow here for constraints. We could freeze our X and Z rotation. Why do I do that? Because the only rotation we care about is the one that's around the y-axis, this middle one. So I'm freezing these two so that it won't like tumble around and do crazy things. And I think that should be enough. So if I do this, yeah, everything works fine. Okay. All right. So, but like, as you can see, there's like one problem. Like, no matter what direction I'm going, our character is always facing the same direction. We don't really want that for a game. So the solution is usually to add a face direction function. And this is, if you're doing like a game, you're often going to find this function, especially if you have like a character with like a face. You usually want it to like face the appropriate direction. The example we gave yesterday with the triangles, like obviously like a triangle doesn't really need to act normally. It could do whatever it wants, but for characters it's you'll usually find a face direction function. So in here, we're gonna have our transform. So our transform, if you remember correctly, is this up here for our character. And rotation. So we're gonna tell our character to change its rotation. And to do this, we're gonna use again our linear interpolation function. Just so linear interpolation is usually used to like do smooth transitions from one position to the other, or one rotation to the other, I guess in this case. And but this time we're gonna use quaternion. I think there's lerp, but I'm gonna use slerp, which is just the same. It's similar to lerp, but it's circular. And the reason why we're using quaternion in this case is because we're dealing with rotations, and rotations are always, they're quaternion, they're of quaternion type, so we can't like assign rotation to vector 3. It has to be a quaternion. So yeah, as I said, I'm gonna use slerp just because since we're using rotation, we kind of want it to rotate circularly. And here, you could also, once I added parentheses, it says, okay, I need a first variable, a first like rotation position. I need a second rotation position, and I also need like a numerical kind of I don't remember what T is. It's just kind of like a number that will either emphasize or de-emphasize the speed at which it's like interpolating, I think. And we're going to use our transform as well. Well, our current transform, our current rotation, like that. And we want it to turn towards our new rotation, which is going to be quaternion. And there's a function look rotation. And we're going to use our input vector that we had before. So this is the look rotation function is just allowing us, it basically gives us the angle that input vector, the vector gives here, because every vector has an angle assigned to it. This function just kind of extracts it from it. And this is where our turn speed gets into place. So we could add our turn speed to like the last variable, which basically tells how quickly we want to interpolate from our first and last rotations. And we're gonna also use time dot delta time. Like that. So now we're gonna add this as well to our update. And now, if we go back to our game, hopefully it will face the right direction. It's not working. Must have forgot something. Let's see. Maybe it's I have to write this dot transform. Let's see. Oh, I forgot.
Rosie had a typo in your.
Yeah,
there.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Definitely missing something.
Oh, music play said your turn speed is at 0. Is that why?
Oh, that's probably why. Thank you very much.
Good catch.
So
good catch.
make sure to add turn speed. There you go. Okay. But now I'm having a problem. It looks like it's kind of like 90 degrees to like the actual direction I'm going. So I guess a good way to fix that. I had this problem before and we kind of fixed it earlier. So we added a vector 3 and we called it rotation vector. Or like fixed rotation, I'll call it. Because sometimes there's some weird Unity behaviors like this, and if you don't really have time to understand why it's going 90 degrees, you're gonna have to like cheat your way through it. And this fix rotation variable will be a new vector, and we're just gonna kind of I'm not sure if these will be correct, but I'll kind of pick trial and error at this point. I think this was the fix that I had. So basically this is just kind of inverting our I think it's telling our if Leandra, you could help me out. I think we're kind of like telling our game that our true Z coordinate is actually our X coordinate. That's why we're switching our Z coordinate with input.x and then our input vector Z here.
Yeah, it's a little tricky in this because we just made this work like a couple hours, about an hour ago or something. But what I think, and that's a theory we need to dig a little more into it, is that the objects transform and its coordinates and its rotation are local and not based on the world. So if we just use local rotation coordinates, it's gonna be incorrect. So we have to do this inversion of the coordinates so it faces the correct place, because there is such a thing in game engines that things can have its own coordinate systems that are like child of the one that the world possesses, but they are different. So just keep that in mind. It's a little like it's like linear algebra stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a little tricky to understand, but it's because of that.
But here's like not really. I don't know. I'm just kind of messing around here because it's not exactly working properly. But
yeah, what I remember doing is so what is ahead when you press like right? Oh, you need to change the vector in the lerp, in that slurp there. No, go back.
Huh?
In the transform rotation quaternion
as
slurp,
yes,
you need to change
I forgot.
the
Yeah. So make sure to change the
Yeah, and
the rotation
get the
here.
minus out of the
Yeah.
vector x, I think.
I think
I
it's
think it's
either
the-
this one or the other one that had a minus. We'll test in a
I
second.
don't remember. I think it's the z.
Oh, okay. Now it's going like upside down. But we're close.
Yeah. Just invert the
I think,
minuses.
I think we just have to remove that here. Okay, so there we go. We fixed it, and
I think
I think
the up and down are switched. You probably need to put them.
they're working properly. Oh, actually
Or the x's, I don't know. But you need to invert the other one, I think. Put a minus there.
yeah, the z-axis is inverted because going upside down, like that. Okay,
there
so
you
this
go.
is our
Yeah,
fixed rotation.
That should fix.
It's just kind of fixing like the
Yeah.
coordinates, I guess. Maybe if we use like local rotation, isn't there like a... You could use like, there's local position, local rotation, stuff like that. But I'm just gonna stick with like what we figured out earlier, because I don't want to spend too much time on this. But yeah, like that's another thing that's kind of tricky with Unity, is that like sometimes you have to deal with the local rotation, which is the local rotation of your model, or you're messing with the world location. So just like make sure you're using the right ones. All right, and I think we're done for our movement. I'm just gonna reposition our camera a little bit because it's kind of a bad position. Since my mouse is not working properly, I have to use Alt left click to zoom in and out, which is kind of annoying. But it will do. I'm just gonna rotate this a little bit. Actually, I'm gonna rotate it downwards, just to have like a little top view like that. And okay. All right. So we're done our character movement. But now, like, it just looks like it's sliding through our plane. So at this point, we want to add animations. So we're gonna add a new folder for our animations. And in here, we're gonna create something called a animator controller. And we're gonna call it Shark Animator. And once you do that, there's like a new tab that will open called the animator. And there's a couple of elements in here. Uh-oh, I can't zoom. Okay. So we have an entry state, we have an exit state that we'll probably never ever use. And we have any state, which is useful if you have like a lot of states that can be applicable in any circumstances. But for now, we're just gonna deal with entry, and at this point we could add. I'm just gonna move this here. At this point, we're gonna add the animations that were kind of embedded with our model here. So you could just kind of there's an arrow with the model that you import, and you just open it, and there'll be like a bunch of things that might have been attached to it. And since I already did animations on Blender, like everything shows up here. And this is our torque animation, and this will be our idle like position. So once we enter the game, this will be the default animation that will occur. And then we also have our walking animation, which as you can see, like the orange means that it's default, and then the gray means it's like an additional animation. But to get to here, we have to add a transition from twerk to walk. And I'm just gonna move this back here. And once we add our transition, if you click on it, there's like a bunch of new settings that will appear. And basically it's just like explaining how are we gonna transition from twerk to walk. So here I recommend that you unclick exit time, because sometimes it will try, if it's like clicked, it will like automatically kind of try to do a smooth transition between twerk and walk, which will tend to cut off one animation mid animation, or it will make it finish the animation completely. But sometimes that's kind of weird, because if you're starting to walk and you haven't exited this animation, it will continue twerking until like for a couple of seconds before transitioning to the next animation, which is kind of it's just doesn't look very good. So I recommend to like uncheck these things. Fixed duration does the same thing, and we also want a transition from walk to twerk, and I'll uncheck these as well. So here, we have transitions, but we're not telling our game like what will trigger our character to go from here to here. So for that reason, we have to add parameters. And usually booleans are pretty good. So I'm gonna have like a boolean called walk, and I have a boolean called, actually, I think one boolean for the purpose of our game is enough. I'll just have walk. And here we have our conditions tab, and we could tell our game that if we're walking, we're going to transition to our walking animation. So when walk is true, do this transition. And here we're going to do if walk is false, go back to twerk. But now, this is still not enough, because we have to tell our code when is walk true and when is walk false. So here we're going to add a new variable for our animator. And similarly to rigid body, we have to get the component. Like that. And also, don't forget to actually add the component to our character. So, no, that's the wrong one. Remove component. We want animator. And here for controller, just pick the one that we just created. So Shark Animator. And all right, now we will actually have a component to look for. And I'm gonna create a new function for our animations. And right here, I'm also going to add the boolean that we needed. So is walking. So by default, is walking will make it false. But once we're moving, so to check if we're moving, I'm gonna go in the input function that we had before. And I'm just gonna basically check whether or not horizontal or vertical are not equal to 0. So is walking equals horizontal is not equal to 0, or I have like a I have a French keyboard, so I can't see some of the icons. All right, so vertical is not 0. So this is just checking. It's just saying, is walking, it will be true if horizontal is not equal to 0 or vertical is not equal to 0. So here we could do is we could check if is walking. So we had our animator controller, and to set the parameter, the boolean we had in the editor here to true, we used the function set bool. And then the parameters here is the ID. So the ID is the name that you gave it here, and in this case we called it walk. And what else? Yeah, so the ID and then our value. So here, walk. Make sure that the ID matches perfectly the parameter that you put in the editor, or else it won't work. And when it's walking, it's true. Actually, I don't even need this if statement. So I'm just gonna delete that. And instead of having like if walking is true, do all of this, and if it's false, make this false, you could just do is walking directly like that. Because this will either be true or false. So now if we go in our game, I think it should work. So there you go. So now we're twerking. This is the default state. And if I start moving, whoa, it's going like the wrong way. It's not transitioning for some reason. Is walking. Did I miss something? Oh, it's probably because I didn't add animate to our update. Obviously. Okay, so that will do it. I keep adding functions and then I forget to put it. Okay, so now, even if it's going the wrong way, at least it's doing our animations properly. I think this is not working again.
Though I think the fact that it's going like in the wrong direction just makes it even better.
Yeah, it's like moonwalking, huh?
It just makes it even better. It's amazing.
I don't know why it does this. It's like, it's so annoying, but whatever.
I think
That's a big part
maybe it's like the model and the animations have the forward looking weird. Now it's working right. I don't know.
Yeah, now it's working. Oh, I think wait. I think it's because like maybe my animations might have like a local rotation that's different than like
Yes,
something
exactly.
else.
Oh god, now it's
It was
kind
better
of
before.
walked around.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Okay, we'll just keep it like that for now. All right. Okay. So yeah. So we've covered animation, and now I'm gonna finish off by adding some sounds to our thing. So I'm gonna create a new folder for our sounds. and I don't know if you guys could hear, but there's a bunch of like ambulances in my background. And I had a walking sound effect here that I found earlier. I'm just gonna import it to our game. So if you guys are curious, it's just a free MP3 sound that I found online. And so here, to add sounds, we have to add it to our character. And you want to add something called an audio source. So in audio source, you select the sound that you want, and you could like adjust like the volume, and there's a couple like little things that you could tweak. Unity is not that great for adjusting sounds, so I would recommend to like adjust them using an actual sound like program. But if you need to like adjust the volume, you could do it here as well. Like obviously when you make sounds, you won't know like perfectly if the volume will be correct. But yeah, I'm just saying this because like I've tried sometimes trying to modulate sounds, and it doesn't really work very well, in my experience. So, and I'm also gonna add maybe like a sound for our twerking, I guess. So I'm gonna add a new audio source. And I had like a little easy sound miking thing here that was just pretty easy to do things with. And I'm gonna use like, I'll just do like a quick little song.
Just plays random notes. My song. That's gonna sound awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. So I'm just gonna export it.
They're not even gonna listen to it.
Yeah, and
Okay.
when it's gonna be
Just
twerking,
go.
it's gonna be dancing to that.
Whatever that is.
Whatever it is. Awesome song. And .wav. And I'm gonna add this to sounds. After this tutorial, we're gonna have a workshop which will show us like how to make better songs than this. But I'm not a musician, so we're just gonna have to deal. Where is the thing that I just saved? Oh, there, awesome song. Okay, so there you go. And I'm just gonna add this to the audio clip. And then in code, since the sounds here are dependent of the shark's movement, we're gonna go on to player controller. And we have to, since we have multiple sounds, we're gonna have to make like an array of sounds. So first of all, I'm just gonna have a reference to the 2 audio clips that I had, audio sources from that. So here I had walking, and also had, what was it, I guess twerk, like that. And in the start, we're gonna assign our audio sources with the, it's an array because it will just check like the, well, this is actually like an array. So like, so we have like 2 elements in our audio sources array. And so walking is like our first index, and then awesome song is our second index. So so we want to grab that from our editor. So we have audio source array, audio sources, and then we get component audio source. Usually if you have like multiple of the same component, you could automatically like form an array of each of them, like this. So it's not only audio sources. And then at this point we have walking, which will be audio source is 0, which is the first index in our array. And we have twerk, which will be our second index in our array. And if you're like really a noob at programming, so arrays always start from 0. It's a 0, 1, 2, 3, and not 1. Like, yeah, there's a little thing to know. For some reason, I have an error here. What did I do wrong? I think I might have done it. Oh, it's get components. Since there's multiple, you have to add the S. Very specific. So, I'm just gonna add our sounds to, actually, I'll make a new function. And I'll call it sounds. And, so if we have if we're walking, we're gonna play our walking sound, and there's a function play like that. Else it will be our twerking sound. Like that. And then if we go back here, it should work, hopefully. Oh, okay. They're both playing. Maybe that's because... Oh, in audio sources, there's like a check here that says play on awake. We want to uncheck that because basically that just tells the game like when you start playing, like these sounds will automatically get set off, and we don't really want that. And now there's no sounds at all. Oh, that's for some reason our awesome song precedented our walking sound, so that's something that I have to fix. Usually that doesn't really happen, but there you go. I don't think that's gonna fix our problem though. Any idea what I did wrong?
Is it not playing?
Yeah, it's not playing. Twerk play. Did I...
There is a play. Is the volume of the editor not muted or something? Playback volume.
Audio.
No, it's not muted. Okay.
Weird.
Don't
I know why. It's again the same problem as I keep getting. I keep forgetting to put this in the update.
You need to, yeah, okay.
Don't do
Yeah,
what I do.
I didn't
kid.
see that.
Yeah, so make sure to have it in update. It should be fine.
So the simpler things are the easiest ones. Forget.
Okay, now they're like inverted again. This is really annoying. So okay, like that. And now it should work. The walking sound isn't very high quality.
I really cannot listen to it. Are you guys hearing it?
No, I can't hear it either. I think it's because Rose is using headphones.
You guys can't hear it?
Probably not, because I think it's if you're using headphones, it's probably only on like via your headset, so we
Oh
can't hear
no.
that. So you might need to change your audio playback to like from the computer instead of it playing to your
Okay.
headphones. Yeah.
It's not very
Yeah.
good anyways, but
Because that's the Discord, not the probably in the stream or no OBS it's capturing correctly. I'm not sure. Where is like stream?
I guess I could wait, this is maybe it. Maybe that one. Let me know if you could hear.
Nope, I can't hear it on my side.
Yeah, me either.
Hmm.
I'm not sure why. Or if Discord is the problem.
It might be Discord too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's something on Discord.
It sucks.
But I don't know enough of the Discord streaming thing to have any solution in my head.
Wait,
Because if it's playing for you, then it's working, which is good.
let me try.
Oh, there you go.
Now we'll hear it.
It's very
Yeah.
laggy, but
Yeah,
but we
but I
can
can
hear
hear
it.
yeah. Yeah, that's the
Right.
walking. And then if I'm twerking, it's doing the song. I don't know why the walking sound is so bad. But yeah. There you
It's
go.
not too bad. it's just-
Beautiful.
yeah.
Horrible. But yeah, that's basically the basics of sound. Like obviously, you could kind of improve what I've done and mess around, but yeah, that's the basics. Do you guys have any questions? I bet music.play is very disappointed right now. Like, that is not some real music. Unfortunately, like, I'm sorry. Hopefully, Lee later on will be able to impress you.
Oof. Sending all the pressure to Lee now. I see
Yeah.
what you're doing.
But yeah, unfortunately, like I wanted to show like how like cameras worked a little bit more, but I just didn't really have enough time today to kind of practice with it, and but yeah, I'm sure you could find like a bunch of tutorials on that online. Yeah, exactly. We could link some tutorials.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that's it for today. I hope you guys like enjoyed and learned a thing or two. And if you guys have any questions, we could always like take the time to respond. And I mean, this is the perfect Discord for you guys to ask anything you want. We're here to help. And I hope you guys have a great day and see you later. Bye, guys.